This episode is sponsored by Apollo, a tool that's helping me to open doors and close deals faster. Wanted to share it with you. Apollo is a complete end-to-end sales platform, letting you email, dial, connect on social, build plays, and schedule meetings. With conversational intelligence transcribing my calls lately and reminding me to act on my next steps to drive deals across the finish line, it's been a lifesaver. It's no wonder Apollo is the most loved sales tool on the planet. Thousands of users rank Apollo as a top tool on G2. Start today completely free and see how Jesse and I use Apollo. Sign up in the show notes below or at thesalesplayers.com/Apollo. That's thesalesplayers.com/APOLLO to start your free trial.
Welcome to Sales Players, the #1 podcast for top players in B2B sales.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the world of sales, this is the show for you.
We're all about bringing you fresh, actionable ideas to supercharge your rev gen game.
We dive deep into the mindset, habits, and tools used by top performers in the industry. Generate more leads, close more deals, and build wealth and financial security in B2B sales.
So if you're ready to level up, you've come to the right place. Join the conversation with other like-minded sales players and continue the discussion beyond the show.
Hit the subscribe button, tune into the Sales Players, and let's start winning together.
Hey sales players, it's Jesse here, and this episode is dedicated to storytelling. I wanted to just share a few resources that I've used over the years to help improve my ability to tell stories, particularly around the products that I'm selling, because what I've found is when you can incorporate some storytelling into your pitch, you're more likely to get an emotional response from your buyer, and they're more likely to buy from you. So I wanted to share a few things that I've learned over the years. There's two particular resources, and I'm going to share those in the show notes. This actually came up recently in a podcast episode that I did for the pod, How the Deal Was Done. I'm going to link to that episode as well in the show notes. But basically, how do you craft a story or a narrative around your product in a way that helps people get rallied around it and helps you build champions? It'll help you reach the executive level and help you tell a big picture story around the business case for what you're selling. Regardless of what you're selling, there's bound to be some story as to why it's going to be beneficial for the buyer, why it works for their company, and why you're trying to help them create change and transform something about their business. We talked about this on another recent episode, Chase and I, was the idea that people buy things because of status. They want to elevate their status, and that's consumer things. People buy Porsches or expensive handbags and things like that, or Rolexes because they're trying to boost their status. But people, believe it or not, actually buy B2B tools or products to elevate their status. It might be within their company. Maybe they want to make their boss think that they're really smart and savvy, and they, are going to save the company a bunch of money. Maybe they want to buy something that's like the next big thing. It's some AI product that's going to change the world, and they're early in on that. They're an early adopter of something like that. There's always something that, all of this ties back to human psychology in some form or fashion. And one of the things that I've learned from studying human psychology in business over the years is that people buy to elevate their status. Now, that's not the main reason to tell stories, but stories can help you paint that picture for your buyer. It can help them understand the true impact that your product or service might have on their business. And then it's sticky in the sense that if you tell a prospect a story and then they have to go and tell that story back to their CFO, they're going to be better at doing that if it's a really powerful story. So let's dive into it. Here's some of the resources that I've used over the years to improve my storytelling. And I can't share, unfortunately, there's a deck that I've used as an example of this. It was for a startup that I worked at a few years ago. I'm not going to show that, but I'll try to explain specifically how I incorporated some of that storytelling into my very first intro calls that I would have with a prospect and how I would help qualify that prospect using the story. And I'll try to give an example of that. But let's start with this blog post. I'm actually going to share my screen here. So if you're watching, you'll be able to see what I'm sharing here. The first resource is this Medium post that was put out years ago at this point by a guy named Andy Raskin. And if you're not connected or following Andy on LinkedIn or Twitter, I would definitely recommend it. He's basically a startup storyteller. And so he helps CEOs and founders, VPs of sales, CMOs, et cetera, craft their narrative or their story for the marketplace. And it was super exciting because I had I had read this blog post or this Medium post years and years ago. And on my own, I tried to incorporate some of the aspects into my first deck. And I was super excited when I started my new role in my current company that they used this as their basis for creating our story deck or our narrative, which is really awesome because I really think that this is super powerful stuff. The blog post is called The Greatest Sales Deck I've Ever Seen by Andy Raskin. And he says here it's Zora's and it's brilliant. Here's why. I'm not going to read the blog post word for word, but I'm just going to share a few of the elements that make this super powerful. So the first is that you're going to cite a big change in the world, a big relevant change in the world to your buyer. And so he uses the example, Zora, if you're not familiar, was like a subscription payments company. So companies were buying Zora to manage their recurring payments and things like that. So you can see here, this first slide is, we now live in a subscription economy. It's a really simple slide. There's not a lot of, just clutter on it. Frankly, it's just this very simple sweeping statement. Humans respond really well to big statements like that. We live in a subscription economy. We're living in a different era. So you're citing a change in the world. And this is a little bit more of a complex slide. There's more content on here, but it's still pretty simple. It's images, big, bold text. Something else I'll link, actually another resource that is coming to mind here is I think it's called the 30-20-10 rule or the 10-20-30 rule for PowerPoints. And I'm going to totally butcher this because I don't have it in front of me. I'll link to the post in the show notes, but it's basically some guidelines for how big you want the text to be in a PowerPoint, how many slides you want to have. And I'm trying to remember what the other thing was, but it's the 10-20-30 rule for building PowerPoints that are just simple. You don't want to have too many words on your PowerPoint. You don't want to have a slide deck that's just full of a bunch of like too much images or too much clutter because it's going to distract. So if you look at these slide examples, they're really simple. So this is what I've always called like drawing a line in the sand. And I've done this in a lot of my intro conversations. I basically cite this change in the world, and then I cite the worldview of the product or company I'm selling. So that's showing that there'll be winners and losers. The people that adopt this and go forward are the innovators, and everyone who doesn't is going to be missing out on something really big, right? So I'll give an example of how I did this. I was at a startup a number of years ago, and we had this big sweeping statement that was, engineering shouldn't be a black box. Engineering shouldn't be a black box. And so I had that on a slide. And when I would present that to a CTO, I would say, engineering shouldn't be a black box. Here's why. And there was a few reasons as to why. And then before I would even advance to the next slide, I would, look the CTO in the face and say, Mr. and Mrs. CTO, do you agree with that statement? Or do you see the world in the same way? And honestly, if they didn't, the call was basically over. If they couldn't see the worldview of the product we were selling, it was, okay, well, maybe this isn't the right fit then. It's a qualifier. So you want to draw this line in the sand and you want to, make those big statements and help people see that vision. And if they don't, that's okay. They might not be ready to buy right now. They might not be an early adopter. They might not be someone they want to invest a lot of time into because they just might not be ready to buy this. So again, just showing some of these examples, I'll try to run through these really quickly. And you can see here how Zora uses some examples to back up their big sweeping statements. What's the common thread? Teasing out the promised land. So, again, it's guiding someone to come to these conclusions of, oh, this product might really change our business. And citing some changes in the world, but backing it up with specific business examples, showing a few simple things on the screen here that customers care about. Customers are expecting more from their subscription experience. It's part of the world we live in now. This is a more technical slide, but it shows, some data, the old and the new, what's been traditional, what's the legacy thing, and where's the puck going, right, is sort of the intent behind this slide. So this, I'll link this again in the show notes. Go check this article out, this blog post out, and go follow Andy because he's really, a great writer and storyteller. He has some interesting thoughts on a lot of different things, but this particularly is super powerful. And then, there's a lot of thoughts around how to standardize this across the sales team. So having a really powerful narrative told by everybody from your marketing team to every single seller to your SDRs, et cetera, is super powerful for a business. And again, just showing these examples of these Zora slides, subscription economies here. And it's this whole narrative that's going to help guide this person through the process. And it's going to get them excited about jumping into an evaluation of your product if you can outline some of these things. So that's the greatest sales deck ever. Definitely check it out. The next resource, I'm going to jump over here, is if you're familiar with Simon Sinek, I think I'm pronouncing that right. He has this concept of the golden circle. And so I worked with a CRO many years ago at a startup, and this was really the basis for how we...
If you do any prospecting with LinkedIn, you have got to go get set up with Surf. That's SURFE. It's a tool you can use to add new contacts to your CRM system directly from LinkedIn in seconds. I'm using it every single day. I add contacts, follow my deals, keep track of notes, and it ends up saving me a bunch of time on prospecting and outreach, which means I can spend more time moving my deals along. The data is always 100% accurate since I don't have to copy and paste all the fields over from each and every contact that I want to put in my CRM. Instead, Surf does that all automatically with just one click in about 60 seconds. The team over at Surf has put together a very special offer for fans of sales players. There's a link down in the show notes, and you can use the promo code JWSURF5. Don't forget the E at the end of Surf. That's JWSURF5 for 5% off your first year. Don't spend another minute doing things manually. Go get set up with Surf.
Wanted to present our product. So for the golden circle, the key takeaway from this is the starting with the why versus starting with how or what. But that's generally the order you want to go in. You want to first define why your company exists. Why are they doing what they do? Then you can get into how they do it. And that's a good opportunity to focus on differentiators. Here's how we do it differently than other people. And then you can go into specifically what it is. What's the meat of what you offer? What is your product capable of doing? So starting with why, then going to how, and then going to what. And what he says here in his TED Talk and in this article is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So being able to show a bigger vision, a why, a purpose, really helps people get rallied around something. And it's going to be super helpful as you start to incorporate the why. Now, you might be asking, so what if my company doesn't really have a why? What if they just do something really basic? We have a basic business service or SaaS offering, and there's no why or big vision around it. How do I understand the why? And I think that's something you can incorporate into your own pitch, your own narrative. Go figure out what the why is for you. If your company doesn't have that defined, why do you sell that product? Why are you doing it? What makes you excited about what you do? And then you can get into the how and the what. So I do this a lot as well, as I always try to tie what I'm selling into me personally. In my case, for the last several years, I've sold contact center technology, and I started my career as a contact center agent. So it's really easy for me to incorporate my own story into my narrative by telling that story and talking about how I operated as an agent, and now how I work on the technology side of that and incorporate that into my conversation with prospects. So hopefully this stuff is helpful. I'm going to link all the resources here in the notes. And yeah, good luck out there. Tell your story, start with the why, and draw that line in the sand. It'll help you understand who's a serious buyer and who isn't, and who's going to rally behind your message and help you get the deal done. Thanks for listening.